I am here with Aaron Moncur, who is the founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. He's been an engineer for 20 years. He's run Pipeline for 15. He runs a medical device company that also specializes in producing the equipment that produces medical devices. And he has a goal to improve the human experience with a wide variety of community outreaches. So without further ado, let's talk to Aaron. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Joseph, for having me on. I sure appreciate it. I've been excited to have this conversation with you. I love what you're doing for engineering and the engineering community, and super grateful to be on your show and be a part of that.
Well, it's an honor to have you on here. And it's been great to see how far Pipeline has come and all the different things that you're doing. You know, I've seen that you've really reached out to the community. First, I noticed through a podcast. Tell me about that. And not so many companies focus so much on this sort of podcast aspect of things. What's gotten you into the space?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It really started during COVID, and I was part of a business coaching group at that time. And the mentor or the leader of this group posed a question to us that I thought was so interesting at the time. He said, "What if COVID decimates your business and you go out of business? You have to close shop. What are you going to do next?" And I thought, wow, what an interesting question to consider. So I thought about it for a long time. Luckily, we actually did really well during COVID as a company, but as an intellectual exercise, it was really interesting for me to think about that question. And I thought about what are the things that I really enjoy doing? And I like learning. I love learning. I love engineering. And I thought at the time, maybe I write a book. Maybe I'll become an author, right? And that seemed a little far out in left field. So I thought, well, what's something else that might be interesting? I like talking with small groups of people. I do not like being in large groups. Going to a party where I don't know hardly anyone is not something I would enjoy doing at all. But small groups of people who are interesting, I love just getting a chance to talk to them and learn about what they do and what I can learn from them. So then this idea of the podcast hit, and I thought, oh, that would be really cool. I could start a podcast. And it didn't take long to realize, well, I don't need to wait for Pipeline to go out of business to start a podcast. I can do that right away in parallel, to support Pipeline. And so that's how it started. And that was over 4 years ago. We're on season 5 now, and it's just been a very rewarding experience for me, both professionally and personally.
That's great. It reminds me of someone saying, "Hey, what if we did podcasts in real life where you just get a few people and you have a conversation, nothing's recorded?" And someone said, "Well, dude just invented hanging out all over again." So I have to agree.
Totally.
I think we engineers are kind of introverts, and small groups of people are probably the best way to go.
Absolutely.
Anything interesting come out of doing a podcast? I mean, what have you seen from your audience, and has it made a difference in your Pipeline business side?
Yeah, all of the above. We regularly get messages from people on LinkedIn, or sometimes people reach out on email just saying, "Hey, thank you for doing this. I learned so much. I didn't know, half of the things that you talk about on the podcast." Oftentimes from younger engineers, especially students, but from older, more experienced engineers as well. So I know it's having an effect out there in the community, which is kind of the goal. So that's great. And it has also been a really great business tool for us. My role these days is largely focused on kind of the business development and marketing. I don't do a lot of hands-on engineering anymore, but I still manage a few projects here and there. Anyway, because my role is kind of in that business development realm right now, I've learned that if I cold call someone that I want to do business with, 99 times out of 100, they're not going to answer, or if they do, they're going to hang up right away, or if it's an email, they're not going to respond. Typical, right? I do the same thing when people cold reach out to me. It's fine. It's just part of business. But if I reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I think that you would be a wonderful podcast guest. I'd love to have you on the show and learn a little bit about what you do. You can share with the whole engineering community a few insights and some wisdom that you have legitimately," right? Not like setting them up and trying to misuse this tool of the podcast. So if I don't think that there's any value for the listeners, I'm not going to reach out to someone. But if I think that it would be an interesting guest, and hey, could be a good business connection too, absolutely, I'll do that. And I have learned that I'd say at least 50% of the time, people say yes. When it's framed in the context of kind of a fun experience, right? Being on a podcast, that doesn't happen every day. And a lot of people have never been on a podcast. And they understand that they'll have the opportunity to share all of this experience and wisdom that they have with a large group of engineers that's meaningful for them, right? And so they'll talk to me for an hour doing that. Whereas if I just tried to cold call, click, right? No response, no answer. So it's been a great business marketing tool and just really fun for me personally. I've gotten to know so many wonderful people out there, engineers, right? That I never would have gotten the chance to know without it. So all around, it's just been a great tool and experience for me and everyone who's been a part of it.
That's great. You've got a great studio too. I've been in there once or twice, and it's been really well put together. So a studio to the envy of all, I think. And then
thank you. I have to give all the credit to Raphael Testai, who really built that podcast room out and did a great job. And I know you've been there as a guest on our show when Raph was co-hosting. So thank you for again adding so much wonderful content to the engineering community.
Well, it was great to be there. And between you and Raph, man, you guys make a great podcast team. I also noticed that you have a lot of content on YouTube. Now, maybe on its face, when you offer engineering as a service, you might be shooting yourself in the foot if you teach people how to do it all on YouTube. But I think there's more to that story. Tell me a little bit more about your YouTube channel.
Sure. Speaking of Raph, this is how we actually first met. Those of you who don't know Raph, he graduated with a degree in genetics, so having nothing to do with engineering. But then after graduating, decided, well, I think I would like to be an engineer. Wasn't super excited about going back to school for 4 years, understandably. So he approached me and said, hey, can I apprentice basically at Pipeline, learn on the job? And I said, well, I don't know if that'll work. I'd never done anything like that, but he had some good experience developing training curriculum, and I was very interested in developing some engineering content, training curriculum, what is now largely in our YouTube channel. And so we got together and agreed that he would help develop this engineering content with some of his skills if I would agree to teach him how to be an engineer. And it worked out quite well. We worked together for I think about 4 years. He's moved on now, doing other things. Great. I wish him the absolute best. And at the time, the idea was to call this Pipeline Academy, and it was all about practical skills for engineers, maybe that didn't want to go the traditional college route and spend 4 years at a university, but still wanted to be an engineer and just learn the engineering things. Not necessarily the other general content that you would need to learn at a university to graduate. So we spent a better part of a year, maybe a year and a half, putting together all sorts of engineering content about instrumentation and mechanisms and equations and CAD and materials and all this kind of core fundamental, just like in the trenches, how do you do engineering content? And that is the majority of what is on our YouTube channel right now. The idea of Pipeline Academy didn't take off. We didn't have quite the resources to do what I wanted to do, but all the content we created is still there, and kind of the underlying idea behind Pipeline Academy is still growing to this day in different forms, and I think we'll probably get into talking about some of those things as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great channel, and I've really enjoyed looking at some of the things that especially Raph has put up there. He's done a great job, as you said. Now, I think reaching out to the community just seems to be synonymous with the Pipeline because, not only are you doing podcasts and YouTube, but you're also doing a voluntary CAD club. Tell me about your efforts there.
Yes, this is a a labor of love here. So there's a story behind it that's a little dark, but we're going to come out on a bright note, I promise. A couple of years ago, my son and wife, my wife works at a local high school. My son attends that high school. They're both still there. But a couple of years ago, they got a phone call. My wife works in the front office, and so she kind of knows everything that's happening at the school because she hears information coming in. And they got a phone call from a parent who says, my son is on his way to the school right now. He has a gun with him, and he's looking for a particular student. So I think you should, be aware of this and probably lock down the school. So that's what happened. They locked down the school immediately, called the police, and within a matter of minutes, there were heavily armed police perimetering the entire school. I mean, assault rifles, like heavily armed police officers. There was a helicopter circling overhead. And luckily, they found the kid before he could do any harm. He did have a gun with him, turns out, but they caught him in time, and no harm was done ultimately. But that experience got me thinking. What is it that makes a kid so angry that he's willing to potentially harm one of his peers in this way? And I thought, surely there's something that we could do about this in some small way. How can we help? What could Pipeline as a company do? And I thought, well, we've got this wonderful group of engineers here at Pipeline. We're really good at CAD. Maybe we could use CAD as a tool to influence, to provide a positive role models to some of these younger kids. And so that's what we've done. It's called CAD Club. And once a week, Wednesday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m., we open our doors at Pipeline, and we invite students from the community who are interested in CAD or engineering to come in. And we do 10-week courses 2 or 3 times a year. We just finished our winter course, and we'll be starting up again in the fall. And what we do at CAD Club is we teach CAD and engineering, but really the purpose of CAD Club, the high-level purpose, is to show these kids what healthy adult behavior looks like. And so we have a few ways of doing this. First of all, the wonderful, wonderful team members at Pipeline who very generously donate their time, stay after a long day of work at night to be role models to these kids. And we also have what we call our tenets. And we talk about one of these tenets each week with these kids. And they're basically soft skills, life skills, life principles. For example, early is on time. And the difference between good and great is attention to detail. Persistence beats brilliance. Take what's on the inside, put it on the outside, and talk about it. Just really solid life skills that not just kids, but I mean, everyone, adults need to understand to be successful in our society. So that's what CAD Club is. It's near and dear to my heart, and we've done three classes so far, and I'm just super excited about continuing to do that. And we've had some very, very positive feedback, not just from the students themselves, but from parents, from administrators and educators at some of the schools that we're partnered with. And it's just a really wonderful, uplifting experience for everyone who's been involved.
Wow, what a constructive way to respond to a crisis like that. I was just reading this morning, I think, about an incident like that in Finland, of all places, and to have people like you and the efforts of Pipeline to bring our communities together like this, I think, is just what the doctor ordered.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Now, as a company, Pipeline is pretty impressive as well. What kinds of notable projects have you taken on as Pipeline?
We have done such a wide variety of different projects. Everything that we do is custom. That's kind of our business model for better or for worse. I say that because it's so fun working on something new, right? A custom device or a custom piece of equipment or machinery, but it's not the greatest business model. It's kind of hard to be consistently profitable when you're just making one of something. So much time and effort goes into making that first one. When we can make a second one or a third one, those are typically quite profitable. But that first one, boy, they're fun, but they're tough from a business standpoint. We're working on that. We started about 15 years ago, and at the time we focused mostly on product design. So it might have been a medical device, it might have been an iPhone case, or some kind of consumer product, consumer electronic. These days, however, and this has been the case increasingly so for the past 10 years, our focus is not so much on product design. We still do a little bit of that, but most of what we do is advanced process development, building automated machines, custom fixtures, and just custom manufacturing equipment. And that's mostly what we do. A couple examples of this. This one is kind of neat. One of our customers manufactures a neurovascular guide wire, and they wanted to double their production. So right now they have operators at workbenches with microscopes, and basically they're using like a toothpick kind of to pick up just a little drop of glue and place it on this guide wire and bond two elements together. And not only do they have to bond it together, but they have to the adhesive has to cure in very specific geometries, a kind of a dome shape on one end, like a tapered shape on the other end. So it's a very fickle and tedious process. And quality is good. You know, it's a medical device. They go through all the FDA regulations, of course. So quality is where it needs to be. But there's, you know, a little bit of variation, operator to operator. So they wanted to double their production, and they just couldn't do it with this manual process. And they'd, you know, have to double their floor space, double the head count, double all the equipment, and still they'd have the operator to operator variability. So they approached us and said, hey, how can we automate this process, right? That's really realistically the only way that we can double our production. And so we took a high precision robotic arm, and we put a micro glue dispenser on the end of it. We used some vision systems and a UV curing lamp, and an engineer's brain to figure out, okay, how do we automate this process? And in a couple of months, sure enough, we had this really cool process. We have a video that I can't share because it's under, you know, confidentiality agreements, but really cool video showing these two tiny, tiny elements. I mean, we're talking about thousandths of an inch coming together, glue dispensed, bonded or cured in just exactly the right geometries. So that's an example of what I mean when I say advanced process development is what we do. And then because we are machine builders, integrators as well, once we've worked out the process, then we go and we build the fully automated production equipment, or sometimes it's even manual fixtures, but whatever that production equipment happens to be.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now, having worked on both the fixtures and machinery that makes the medical equipment, as well as designing medical equipment, do you have a personal preference between the two?
I kind of like the equipment, to be honest. It's like a puzzle, you know, figuring out how to get all the different parts together, and the fixturing and the automation. And then once you see everything moving, especially for the fully automated pieces of equipment, it's so cool. You know, just seeing the robots move, the air cylinders and the motors and the sensors and the PLC and the HMI and everything coming together to perform meaningful work. Really, really cool stuff.
Absolutely. I have to think that I might find that pretty preferable as well.
I think any engineer is going to love, you know, just robots and motors and pneumatics, right?
Yeah, a lot of freedom there. I think medical devices, when you go in someone, you have a lot of design limitations compared to the freedom of being able to make everything.
Definitely, yeah.
And then I know a big theme with Pipeline has been resilient CAD modeling. Raf did a great video on that, but I bet you could talk about it here too.
Yeah, absolutely. So resilient CAD modeling, or RCM as we call it, is a methodology for creating CAD models that don't break. Well, you know, no CAD model is going to be like perfect and never break, but this minimizes the chances of that CAD model breaking. The formal definition we've given it is a defined set of rules and best practices for creating robust CAD models. And we have, like you mentioned, Raf did a really great course on RCM, and it's available for free. You can go to thewave.engineer, which is our online community for engineers, and there are free tools, education, community resources there, one of which is this RCM course, and you can take the course, learn all about it. Just really quickly, high level, RCM is built on a set of rules. So there's a group-based hierarchy, which means that certain features in your CAD model get placed in certain areas of your feature tree, right? You don't just have, fillets everywhere and boss extrudes everywhere and cuts everywhere, just kind of mixed in wherever haphazardly. It's a very, very defined methodology for where to place those kinds of features, and it results in CAD models that are far less likely to explode when you're editing them, as is always the case, right? We never just go start to finish, perfect CAD model, we're done, we never touch it again. We always go back and make changes and edits. And so this is a way to minimize the feature tree blowing up when you make those changes.
That's always a good thing.
Yes, yes, it is.
You head over to SolidWorks World now, 3D Experience World, and there's always some seminar on a tree of blood and how to fix it.
A tree of blood. That's good. Okay.
Now, speaking of these kinds of events, I think you are putting on an event of your own called PDX.
That's right. Yes. PDX stands for Product Development Expo. And we are holding the inaugural PDX event this May 14th. It's a Tuesday here in Phoenix, Arizona, actually Tempe. But for those of you who don't live in Arizona, it's basically Phoenix. It's going to be at our facility at Pipeline. And PDX is part of the mission to accelerate the speed of engineering. I have this personal mission to accelerate the speed of engineering to improve the human experience. If you think about everything around us, right, the computers we use, our phones, our cars, the roads, plumbing, right, stoves that we cook our food on, all of these things were developed by engineers. And what would the world be like? What would be the benefit to this world if we could accelerate the speed of engineering by 5% or 10%, right? I have to believe it would be dramatic. So PDX is part of my personal mission to accelerate the speed of engineering. And for this inaugural event, we're calling it PDX Accelerator. And the goal, the focus of this first event is to accelerate the foundational skills of engineers. Certainly, seasoned, experienced engineers will benefit from this as well. Younger, more junior engineers will likely benefit even more from this content. So we're flying in 6 speakers, and these are individuals who largely I have met through the podcast, actually, but they're some of the highest performing engineers that I have ever met. They're so smart, way, way smarter than I am. And these they're not engineering executives. A lot of the time, if you've been an engineer for, 15, 20, 25 years, you're kind of in engineering leadership. You're not really doing the engineering work, which, has been the case for myself as well. But these guys they're still in the trenches, hands-on, actually doing the engineering work. And like I said, they're just brilliant engineers. They're so good at their craft, and they have honed their skill over 15, 20, 25 years, depending on which presenter we're talking about. So they're flying in from different states, and they're going to be presenting at PDX. There are 6 different topics that will be, or talks that will be given. One is about advanced 3D printing functions. One is about a tolerance analysis, how to perform accurate tolerance analyses. And the presenter for that one, Joe Moak, he's got a really neat story talking about it was some kind of camera housing that he had developed, and using this tolerance analysis methodology that he's developed over the years. There was a point in the product history where, a year or two into the product's life cycle, the camera went out of service. They couldn't get it anymore. It was end of life for that particular camera module. And so they needed to find a replacement and drop it in. And because of the way he had developed the tolerance analysis, the tolerance stack on this thing, he said it was literally, if not minutes, a couple of hours to drop this in. All the drawings were updated, ready to send out to the manufacturer, which, I mean, that's pretty incredible, right? I mean, changing a major component of your assembly and having your documentation ready to send back out to the manufacturer in a couple of hours it sounds impossible. Yeah. But anyway, he'll be talking about his specific process that he's developed for tolerance analysis. We'll also be talking about design for manufacturing. Some really cool stories there from James Rogers, who will be giving that talk. One of the presenters is a gentleman who's been an engineer for about 25 years, and he's going to talk about 5 things I wish I'd known 25 years ago as an engineer. What are some of those core lessons that he had to learn in the trenches over 25 years that he's going to impart to the attendees. There will be a talk about visual storytelling with Excel, which I'm super excited for because that engineer is actually someone who works at Pipeline, and I have had the privilege of seeing how he uses this. You will not look at Excel the same way again after hearing this talk. Some of the things he does, I didn't know you could do in Excel, and it's mind-blowing what he's done. Usually, I call it visual storytelling using Excel because it's almost pictorial, the way that he superimposes graphs and charts over like screenshots of CAD models or things like that to tell a story, not just tell a story, but generate very meaningful and useful data that then gets used in whatever application it is. And last but not least, we'll be talking about effective communication. There will be a talk on that. How do we communicate effectively as engineers with our peers, with stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera. So that's Tuesday, May 14th in Phoenix. And I have a special offering for your listeners. So this is just specific to the Joko engineering listenership out there. I'm going to put out a free code for up to 10 of your listeners. So the first 10 people that use this code will be able to register for free. Right now, the early bird pricing is $995 to attend. After the early bird pricing ends, it'll be $1,495 to attend. And this code will allow you to attend the PDX, the first ever PDX event, zero cost, absolutely free. The code is JKEPDX, and hopefully, Joseph, you can put that in the show notes as well. I can send it to you afterwards.
You bet. I bet we're not letting Raf use that one, though.
No way. No. No. All the Pipeline alumni are grandfathered in for free.
Perfect. Well, that is so generous of you. Thank you so much for giving that offer. Can't wait to see who turns up, of my listeners especially. Maybe I'll have to throw in an incentive for him too. So I like what you said, because when you talk about lessons that you wish you'd have learned, right, it takes me immediately back to the lesson that I think I learned the fastest is design reviews are not a measure of you. They're more of a, let's see how we're optimized, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. We just want to skin the cat in the right direction. And once I started saying, I love that idea, instead of thinking that it was just a review of me, it made all the difference in the world, and it made them a lot more fun too. So anyway, that's just kind of where my mind went. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's really, really smart of you to say. I remember when I was a very young engineer, there was an older gentleman who worked where I worked, and he was kind of known for being a little prickly when his design would be reviewed and maybe critiqued. It was never the intention, of course, of anyone to belittle him at all. It was just, here's some ideas for how maybe it could be improved. So that's, I think, such an important lesson to understand. It's really not about you. It's about the design and how we can optimize it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I bet there'll be a lot of great pieces of advice when experienced, seasoned people get together and say, I wish I would have done this 5 years ago.
That's really the goal is, I've been to plenty of conferences and seminars and trade shows and things like that. I'm sure you have too, and many of your listeners. And what I've found at a lot of these conferences is the talks are, I hear a lot of buzzwords, but at the end of the talk, I feel like I didn't really learn a lot of very practical information that I can go home and apply, right away. So that's the goal here, is to extract highly practical engineering knowledge and tools that we can give the attendees, and that they can go back to their job the very next day, the very next week, and start using these tools to improve their performance and just design better products.
I like that a lot. And I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of those experiences on the podcast, having a wide variety of guests on with a wide variety of experiences as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So this being a predominantly CAD channel, I gotta jump into the CAD for a second.
Let's do it. Yes.
I'm guessing SolidWorks is mainly what you guys focus on?
It is. Yes. Yep. So I mentioned that I'm not super hands-on engineering these days, but I spent a long time working in SolidWorks, a solid decade. And if I can toot my own horn, I'll say I was pretty darn good in SolidWorks. I knew it like the back of my hand. I first started working in Pro E. It was back in the day when there was a Pro E, then it became Wildfire, and now it's Creo. But that's the CAD system I learned on, and it was pretty cumbersome, I remember. There are all these menus you had to click through before you finally got to the feature that you wanted to select. And then I started learning SolidWorks at my first job, my first real job, and it was so much easier, and they had these like cool animations just as you rotated parts and things like that. And so anyway, ever since 2004, 2005, I guess, I've been a SolidWorks user. Recently at our CAD club, we needed to select a platform for our CAD club students to use. And SolidWorks, I think, has either a free or a very low cost version that can be used, but it still requires a pretty high performance machine, and there's installation and things to worry about. And the students that we're working with at CAD Club, they're middle school, high school age students. They don't have necessarily a lot of IT type computer experience. So we didn't want to burden them with, well, you have to install this thing and download this big thing. And so Onshape is the program that we've been using at CAD Club. Onshape, for those of you who don't know, is the world's first fully cloud-native CAD application. It's fully featured, very powerful, comparable to SolidWorks. In fact, the gentleman who founded Onshape, John Hirschtick, is the same gentleman who founded SolidWorks. And we have a really cool podcast episode. He was on the Being an Engineer podcast, told some neat stories about how he founded it. Spoiler, Vegas and gambling winnings were involved there. But Onshape has been really neat because it's so lightweight, right? These students come in with their, kind of crummy, low-end public school issued laptops, and Onshape runs just great on those. There's nothing to install. It's free. So that's been a really cool CAD platform that I've gotten to know a little bit as we've taught these students.
I think I have Linux tattooed on the fleshy tablets of my heart, and I really appreciate that I can open up my Linux machine and run Onshape right in the browser. And I think that's a huge point. And I think they've done a really great job, because I think when Onshape first started out, they were like, well, who's going to want to have all their IP tied up in the browser, dependent on an internet connection? And they have just grown and had so many new features put up, and I think they've done a pretty good job in that space.
I do too.
Yeah. I also have to say I feel kind of partial to Libre, since I would say they're the original browser CAD since '97. They since switched to being exclusively desktop install, but they were browser in the beginning.
I don't think I've used a Libre. Okay.
Oh, well, I will see to it that we can make that happen for you.
Okay, done.
What's really cool about it is it's pay once, own it forever, right? It's still on the perpetual model.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's run off of the ASUS kernel, and I've really enjoyed using it. It's one of the things that I focus on in the channel, but I try to focus on accessible CAD on the channel, so FreeCAD, Libre, and those platforms just make it so easy to either have no price or a very low price to get making really complex stuff. So, so that's what I'm focusing on.
Have you used Blender at all?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I'm not sure how accessible that is. I think it's pretty powerful. There are a lot of features to learn. But I know one of our engineers has been dabbling in it lately, and he was showing us some things the other day. Really cool software, and amazing that it's open source and free for the level of like complexity and sophistication you can get into with it.
It is pretty awesome. I've used it almost exclusively for the rendering side of it. And
okay.
It makes a really great direct modeler, right? So if you want to animate or make faces or something like that, man, it's so formidable. And you're right. There's a lot of menus. It's probably kind of like the wildfire of direct modeling because so many options. There's so much power, but you kind of have to know what you're doing with that user interface. But,
how about, I'm just curious here, how about Modo? Have you ever used Modo?
I have not.
Okay. I tried to get into that one. That, again, was pretty complex, and I never really got that far into it, but it was really a very powerful rendering and animation engine, and lots of modeling capabilities as well. Not so much like industrial mechanical type modeling, more free-form organic shapes, but you could do mechanical things as well.
Is Modo closed source?
It is, yes.
Okay. I should give that a try. I've never tried it before.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Gotcha. I know Blender has just come out with the parametric design section of it. So if it's a little bit more SolidWorks-like, I really need to learn that and share what I learned, because that'd be a really unique thing for Blender to be on the parametric side. Might give FreeCAD a run for his money.
Yeah, definitely. Have the SolidWorks plugin for Blender.
That'd be perfect. Well, I think that's everything that I got. Okay.
All right. Well, Joseph, thank you so much again for everything you do for the engineering community. Your channel is such a huge benefit to all of us engineers and those who are interested in engineering. So I just want to thank you for your part.
Well, thank you. I can't think of a better community outreach example than Pipeline and all the efforts that you do to bring engineers together and to make the world a better place. And so much of it doesn't even cost anyone anything. So I think we would definitely be worse off without Aaron Moncur and Pipeline. And thank you so much for everything you brought.
Thank you, Joseph.